Okay, we are on to section 1, the aspirant and the mysteries of initiation. Let us now take up our first point in this section and see what is really meant by the hackneyed words door of initiation and what constitutes the difference between the door which faces the disciple and that which confronts the master. The entering of the two doors of initiation. It is, of course, obvious to you that the use of the word door is purely symbolic. The interpretation given to the word by the ordinary esoteric student and the orthodox theosophist is that of a point of entry, and the significance of it to him is that it offers an opportunity to pass to new experience and fresh revelation, much of which is regarded by him as due reward for discipline and aspiration. That is largely an interpretation based on wishful thinking and is of quite secondary importance. The door of initiation. The real meaning underlying the phrase door of initiation is that of obstruction, of something which bars the way, of that which must be opened, or of that which hides or stands between the aspirant and his objective. This is a much more exact significance and one much more useful for the aspirant to grasp. The picture of a man moving along the path of evolution until suddenly one day he stands before an open door through which he may joyously pass has no faintest resemblance to the truth. The idea that a man of a nice disposition and possessing certain character developments, such as those portrayed in such books by Annie Besant as The Open Court and The Path of Discipleship, which condition the theosophical aspirants, is exceedingly misleading. These books are very useful and should be carefully studied by the man upon the path of probation, but are not useful to the disciple, for they lead him to put the emphasis in the wrong direction and the focus upon that which should have already been developed. Naturally, the character development must be present and assumed to be stable in the man's equipment. These characteristics have, however, little bearing on initiation and passing through the door on the path. They are indicative of the point reached upon the path of evolution as a result of experiment, experience, and continuous expression, and should be common to all aspirants who have reached a point of facing discipleship. They are unavoidable developments and connote simply the reaction of the personality to time and experience. It is eternally true that no one may pass through this door unless these character indications are developed. But that is due to the fact that the aspirant has progressed to a certain stage of unfoldment and automatically now has a measure of self-control, of mental understanding, and of purity. I would point out also that even the black magician possesses these qualities, for they are the sine qua non of all magic art, both black and white. The black magician passes through the door of initiation as it opens twice for the first two initiations. He passes through on the strength of his will and his character accomplishments, and because the group conscious aspect of the soul is active in him, as in his brother seeking affiliation with the Great White Lodge. The love aspect is, however, lacking in the black magician. Forget not that all is energy and there is nothing else. The energy, which is an aspect of the soul and which we call magnetic attraction, the group building quality, he shares with the spiritual aspirant. He is essentially group conscious, and though his motives are separative, his methods are those of the group, and these he can get only from the soul. You see again another reason why the first and second initiations are not regarded by the Lodge of Masters as major initiations. Only the third is so regarded because at that initiation the entire personality life is flooded with energy coming from the spiritual triad via the sacrifice petals of the will and purpose aspect of the soul. To this type of energy, the black magician is not responsive. He can and does respond to the knowledge, most ancient and hardly one, stored up in the knowledge petals of the soul. He can and does respond to the knowledge, most ancient and hardly one, stored up in the knowledge petals of the souls. He can appropriate and utilize the energy of attraction, erroneously called love by some students, stored up in the love petals of the soul, but he cannot respond to and use the energy of divine love working out in the divine plan, which controls all knowledge and converts it into wisdom, and which actuates and clarifies the motive which brings lovingly magnetic attraction into action, and which we call true group consciousness and group cohesion. It is at this point that the two ways of darkness and of light become widely divergent. Until the third initiation is taken, glamour may condition the attitude of those seeking to understand the life of a man on the path, and they may mistake the spurious for the real. The black magician leads a disciplined life, analogous to that of the spiritual aspirant. He practices purity for his own safeguarding, and not in order that he may become a channel for the energy of light. He works with power, the power of magnetic attraction, with and in groups, but he does this for his own selfish ends and for the fulfillment of his own ambitious purposes. But at the third initiation, there comes to the true spiritual initiate the revelation, which is the reward of perseverance and purity rightly motivated, the revelation of the divine purpose, as the soul records it in terms of the hierarchical plan, though not yet in terms of the monad. To this purpose, and to the loving will of God, to use a trite Christian phrase, the black brother cannot respond. His aims are different. You have here the true meaning of the oft-used and misunderstood phrase, the parting of the ways. But both groups of aspirants, the black and the white, stand before the door of initiation and take the needed steps to open it on two similar occasions. Both overcome glamour after the second initiation and see their way clearly ahead, but their goals emerge as widely different. One treads the broad way, which leads ever deeper into matter and materialism, into darkness and black power. The other leads to the straight and narrow way, to the razor-edged path, which leads into light and life. One group has never freed itself from the principles which govern the first solar system. They were principles entirely related to matter and substance, and were at that time and in that period so remote that the number of years of distance can be stated only in super-astronomical figures. The conditioning factors for the initiation of the time. Certain units of humanity, then existent, were so completely conditioned by these material principles, and so deliberately unready for moving on to the comprehension of another set of principles, more expressive of the divine nature, that they remained of fixed and selfish material purpose, and a planned distortion of the divine will was intelligently created by them. You have here a hint as to the nature of evil and a clue to a part, though only a part, of the mystery to be noted in the statement that evil and good are reverse aspects of the same one reality, and evil is that good which we should have left behind, passing on to greater and more inclusive good. Forget not that the black magician of today were the initiates of a previous solar system. When the door of initiation is ready to open for the third time, the parting of the ways takes place. Some follow selfish intention and the fixed determination to remain with the separative condition of matter, and to others the divine will is clearly impressed upon them and becomes the motivating power in their lives. It was under instructions from the Great White Lodge on Sirius that the door remains closed the third time to the Dark Brothers. Evil, as we understand it, has absolutely no place on Sirius. To the Black Magician, at this third opportunity, the door of initiation presents an insuperable barrier and obstacle. To the true spiritual neophyte, the door connotes overcoming. We shall not consider further the approach of the Black Brothers to that door, but shall confine ourselves to a consideration of the initiations of the Great White Lodge. This door of initiation is connected with the great problem of what HPB calls the mystery of electricity. The door is itself an electrical phenomena, essentially. Having said this, even if you do not understand my meaning, you can, however, grasp the possibility that, being electrical in nature, it can easily present an obstructing force, a repelling energy to the approach of the aspirant. This is the correct way to look at it. It is only when the electrical energy of which the door is constituted, and that of which the man is constructed at any particular time, synchronize and vibrate in unison, that the aspirant can pass through to greater light. This gives you a somewhat new and rather abstruse definition of initiation. Nevertheless, as science arrives at a better understanding of the human being as an electrical unit of power and light, and of his triple mechanism as created of three aspects of electricity, a truer comprehension of the significance of initiation will eventuate. The three fires of which all things are made are electrical in nature, and, speaking symbolically, it is only when fire by friction is dominated by solar fire that the first four initiations can be taken, culminating in the fifth initiation, in which these two fires are subordinated to electric fire emanating from the monad and giving a new revelation. This monadic process begins at the third initiation. It might be added that the third initiation, culminating in the transfiguration, is taken on the three higher levels of the mental plane, and that it is therefore upon the fourth level of the mental plane that the aspirant first of all stands before the door, seeking initiation. That electrical unit or phenomena of electricity, which we call the fourth kingdom in nature, on this fourth subplane of the mental plane esoterically ejects the unit of electricity, which is ready to be absorbed by the higher form of electricity. Fire by friction dies out and solar fire takes its place, and the relationship between the two higher forms of electricity becomes established. It is solar fire which forms and likewise guards the door of initiation for the first four initiations. It is the electrical fire which forms the door of initiation for those initiations which guard the way to the higher evolution. There are four types of fire by friction which create the obstructing door in unison with solar fire, of which it is essentially created. These are as follows. 1. Electrical energy composed of two forces of electricity. The innate, inner, and latent force of the physical plane atoms of the dense physical vehicle, and the force which we call prana, which is an aspect of the energy composing the etheric body. These two blend, combine, and form the door, through which the spiritual man must pass when he undergoes the first initiation. This provocative energy tests out every part of his physical equipment, and as he passes the test, the door opens, the opposing energies symbolically die out, and he can pass on to the path of initiation, free from that type of obstruction. The physical body no longer rules him, either through its limitations and faults, or through the physical disciplines which have been hitherto needed but are no longer required. 2. The electrical energy of the astral or emotional body next confronts him as he prepares to take the second initiation. You can call this energy, if you so choose, the sum total of all the glamours. A glamour is essentially a bewildering, deceiving, and illusory energy form which seeks to sidetrack and mislead the neophyte, and which is attracted to him by ancient habit and old controls. He is, therefore, responsible for the impact of this energy. This type of energy takes form, and the masked forms of these glamours constitute the opposing door and oppose the passing of the aspirant on to the next phase of the path. With this electrical energy he must deal before he takes the second initiation. These particular energies are not thought forms, they are drifting, undefined, and exceedingly fluid. Of this type of energy, water is the symbol, and this is one reason why the second initiation is called the baptism initiation, or the initiation of entering the stream. 3. The electrical energy of the mind now creates the door for the third initiation, and the obstruction which confronts the initiate is that of the electrical figments of his own thinking, shining with a light which is all their own, for they are of the highest order and type, but veiling the pure light which shines behind them. They constitute the sum total of illusion. This door is formed by the coming together of the 3 types of energy: fire by friction, solar fire, playing in full force at this third initiation, and electrical fire from the spiritual triad, making its first impact on the other 2 fires, for all 3 are in full activity at this initiatory crisis. All are localized and concentrated in that symbol of progress, the door of initiation. It should be becoming increasingly clear to you why the initiate is ever portrayed as one who works with forces and energies of the planet and the system. To him, there is naught else. The 4th type of fire by friction, which confronts the initiate as he stands prepared for that initiation, which we call the Great Renunciation, is the electric energy of the entire integrated personality, that which is the product of every incarnation. The highly developed, powerful, and clear-eyed personality, as it is called, is the final event and presents the final great obstruction. In the gospel story, there are 2 major episodes in the life of the Master Jesus which throw some light upon this 4th entrance through the door of initiation: the Transfiguration and the Crucifixion. In both of them, the 3 aspects of the personality are symbolized. In the first case, they are symbolized by the 3 apostles who, in bewilderment and profound humility, took part in the third initiation, the Transfiguration. In the second case, the 3 were depicted by the 3 crosses, the 2 thieves, and the central master. The difference in the 4th initiation is definite. It lies in the fact that the 4 aspects of the personality, counting the dense physical body as one aspect and the etheric vehicle as a second aspect of the physical body, are involved. For this 4th emanation of fire by friction, has a potent and destructive effect upon the dense physical body. The great renunciation involves the rejection of the physical life at any cost, and that cost frequently involves its physical death. The renunciation or fourth initiation has, therefore, two aspects: the outer involvement or objective happening in the eyes of the physical plane onlooker, and the subjective aspect portrayed symbolically by the three crosses and those who hung upon them. The implications emerging out of this symbolism are not easy to see, even when the superficial meaning is apparent, because that superficial meaning hides and veils a universal reality. The Master Jesus passed through the door of the fourth initiation and overcame the final hindrances offered by his perfected personality. He died upon the cross. All the four aspects of his personality participated in the event, and all four aspects electrically obstructed his passing through this door, even to the point of their complete destruction, bringing a final liberation. Something universal was also symbolized, which had naught to do with the initiated Master Jesus. This symbolism and its meaning are related to the three crosses which stood side by side, and to the relationship between those who hung upon them. In the three figures, humanity itself is portrayed and also related to the hierarchy, and this pictorial event is a parallel to the one already considered, the initiation of the Master Jesus. In the crucifixion, and this fourth passing through the door of initiation, and in the staging of this event, two great and different individualities, the Master Jesus and the world Savior, the Christ, are implicated. Two major happenings are indicated, and the Christian Church has confused the two and related both of them without discrimination to the Master Jesus. Yet one event was a hierarchical occurrence, and the other was a great human crisis. One was the entrance of an initiate into the mysteries of death, involving in the process of all four aspects of his nature. The other was a dramatic portrayal to mankind of three groups to be found within the human family. One, the unregenerate man, pictured by the unrepentant thief. Two, the struggling aspirant, moving consciously towards liberation, symbolized for us in the repentant thief. And three, the hierarchy, composed of all who have passed to liberation through the medium of human experience, and thereby representing to us a guarantee of achievement. Students would do well to keep this fourfold picture of this threefold symbol clearly distinguished in their minds, for individual attainment and the group possibilities are both involved. Each is, however, distinct. In the one case, the Master Jesus is the participator, and in the other, and the more esoteric occurrence, it is the one with a capital, overshadows him, the Christ. It was the Master Jesus who died and entered into the tomb, thus climaxing his long series of incarnations and ending by destruction the hold of matter on the spirit. Through the tomb, he passed into the hierarchy, and the destiny of the Christian Church was committed to him. That destiny still lies in his hands. But in the gospel story, it is the Christ who is indicated as appearing after the resurrection, and not the Master Jesus, except in the one brief episode wherein he appeared to Mary, weeping outside the door of the sepulchre. The other episodes are universal in their implications, as indicated. One, Christ walking with the two disciples on the road to Emmaus, a symbol of the essential dualism of spirit and matter as embodied in a world Savior. Two, Christ appearing to the disciples in the upper room, symbolizing the zodiac, for Judas Iscariot was there, standing for the sign at the time in power, the other 11 disciples representing the remaining signs through which the Son must pass. 3. Pentecost. This event does not portray the triumph of Orthodox Christianity as the theologians believe and teach, but signifies the universal dissemination of the Christ consciousness throughout all time in the heart of every human being. To this the words and promise, "Lo, I am with you all the days, even until the end of the world," bear witness. It is owing to the deeply esoteric meaning of the resurrection and the ascension and their major significance, referring to the consciousness of the Christ, that nothing much is told us about these initiations in the New Testament, except the vaguest generalities, in contradistinction to the wealth of detail given in the other 4 initiations. 4 of these initiations are related to the door of initiation as occultly understood and with the interpretation of which we are familiar. These 4 are related also to the electrical fire by friction of which that door is constructed and which spreads to and creates the burning ground across which the initiate must 4 times move in order to enter through that door. The other 2 initiations, vaguely called the resurrection and the ascension, are related to the second so-called door. This door is not in the same sense an obstruction as is the first door. It opens on to the way of the higher evolution. The first door symbolically admits the initiate into the heart of the Son, whilst the second door, in a most mysterious sense, indicates the route which must be followed by the liberated initiate who seeks to penetrate to the central spiritual Son, to which all 7 paths eventually lead. The door to the way of the higher evolution. In this next section here, I write not for those initiates who have taken the 3rd initiation, whose personality is soul dominated, and who walk ever in the light. It will therefore be obvious that there is relatively little that I can say at this point which will be comprehensible as far as the true meaning goes, to you who have not as yet achieved that state. The key to your understanding lies in the realization that our 7 planes are only the 7 subplanes of the cosmic physical plane, and that all that now transpires in the life of the initiate simply releases him from physical experience, technically physical even on the atmic, monadic, and logoic planes, into that vortex of force which we know and understand as love, or onto the cosmic astral plane. The note, the quality, and the influence of the cosmic astral plane is love, the higher correspondence of emotion as experienced upon the astral plane of the planetary or solar manifestation. It is therefore to be realized that the hierarchy is definitely under the impact of energies emanating from the cosmic astral plane, while Shambhala reacts to influences coming from the cosmic mental plane. The 3 related streams of energy can therefore be seen to be from 1. The cosmic astral plane, 2. The solar Buddhic plane, reflecting in our planetary Buddhic plane, and 3. The astral plane, the plane of glamour in the 3 worlds. In relation to the mind, you have 1. The cosmic mental plane, 2. The solar atmic plane, reflecting in our planetary atmic plane, and 3. The mental plane, the plane of illusion. And we can look over here at our chart every time we start talking about these planes and put these things together. In connection with the references to glamour and delusion, see glamour, a world problem, it must be borne in mind that the reason glamour predominates and delusion functions in the 3 worlds is due to the fact that men identify themselves with the dense physical brain and interpret life in terms of experience in the 3 worlds. There is no true astral plane from the angle of the personality identifications, but only what might be regarded as the figments of the imagination. Yet fundamentally and substanding, what we know as the astral plane is the reflection of the cosmic principle of love. However, being essentially a reflection, it lacks basic reality from the angle of the true disciple and must be ignored as an expression of fundamental truth. At the same time, the astral plane exists from the angle of the master because it is an expression in dense physical cosmic substance of cosmic love. Its potency is, however, so great that it produces glamour in those who are not yet liberated. Students should remember that focused power produces glamour where wrong identification is involved, but only reality and truth where there is freedom from the factor of form life. Therefore, temporarily, there is no astral plane for the disciple who is withdrawing identification. There is a field of service for the master who has no longer the power to identify his consciousness with anything in the three worlds. He can, however, relate cosmic sources with planetary and solar expressions of energy. As we study the whole subject of initiation and the advanced initiations, it will be found necessary to remember always the relation of our 7 planes to the cosmic range of planes. It is necessary also to bear in mind a fact of oft forgotten, but which has been known and taught ever since modern occultism began to influence human thinking. The 4 planes which connote the highest possible spiritual influences, as far as humanity is concerned, are only, in the last analysis, the 4 etheric subplanes of the cosmic physical plane. These highest planes of our planetary life are, therefore, the source of all energy and all originating activity in our entire planetary expression and experience. These 4 planes are, as you already know, 1, the highest plane, the logoic plane, will, Adi, or life, or the first aspect. 2, the monadic plane, and we can look at these over here in our chart from a Cosmic Treatise on Cosmic Fire. Universal, love, human monads, or the second aspect, right? Love, wisdom. 3, the atmic plane, the third aspect, or intelligence. And the 4th, the Buddhic plane, pure reason, or intuition. This 4th, or Buddhic, is a fusion of 2 and 3, of love and intelligence, and produces understanding and intuitive perception. All influences and energies, therefore, which are prevalent in our planetary existence, flow through and create the 4 above-mentioned planes, and thus determine the nature of the evolutionary process at any given time in the 3 worlds. From the standpoint of a master, the 4 planes are composed of forces which are basically responsive to, and finally conditioned by, the energies wielded by the hierarchy and directed by Shambhala. In a peculiar manner, and under the law of correspondences, the 3 lower planes, mental, emotional, and physical, constitute the 3 dense physical subplanes of the cosmic physical plane, and are not consequently regarded as embodying principles. HPB says, in connection with our physical plane, the lowest subplane of the cosmic physical plane, that it is not a principle. It is not a principle. And this holds good also for the greater whole. The dense physical plane is matter conditioned by a previous solar system, and is almost automatic in its response to etheric energies. These constitute the etheric bodies of all forms created out of this unprincipled substance, as it is occultly called. The 3 lower planes of our 7 planes from the angle of the esotericists, the equally unprincipled dense cosmic substance. The mark or indication of the true initiate is the transfer of his life and his point of identification from unprincipled substance and substantial forms to principled substance and etheric forms. The tendency of the occult student to think ever in terms of spiritual abstraction can, and often does, militate against a grasp of the truth and presents a false picture to the intelligence. The facts which I have just emphasized have much to do with the nature of the higher initiations. I would ask you to remember this. The third initiation, therefore, releases the initiate from the planes of unprincipled substance, the lower subplanes of the cosmic physical plane, whilst the next 2 initiations make it possible for him to work with intelligence and love on the 2 lower levels of the cosmic etheric plane, the Buddhic and the Atmic, the planes of spiritual love and intelligent will. The way of the higher evolution leads through the monadic and logoic planes, the 2 highest levels of the cosmic physical plane. When the 4 planes of the cosmic etheric plane are completely mastered and under occult direction, the initiate is faced with the 7 paths and with the choice to tread one or other of them. His choice is naturally dependent upon ray determinations and past activity, but is nevertheless a free choice because all limitation has been removed. All wrong identification with physical forms is now impossible, and the initiate's only limitation is that imposed by entrance into cosmic levels of awareness with which he is still unfamiliar. Bear therefore continually in mind that the highest spiritual attainment upon and within the 7 planes of our recognized planetary life is entirely conditioned by the fact that they are the 7 subplanes of the cosmic physical plane and are composed of the 3 dense physical planes, our 3 worlds of human evolution, and the 4 cosmic etheric planes, the 4 levels of the so-called spiritual development. These are conditioned by 3 forces and 4 energies. I have emphasized this by constant repetition on account of the great importance and recognition of these facts will play in any grasp you may achieve anent the way of the higher evolution. After the master has taken the 5th initiation, he has, as you know, covered and mastered the ordinary field of evolution for humanity. That means the 3 worlds of ordinary human experience and the 2 worlds of superhuman effort, making the 5 fields of the spiritual activity of man. Love and intelligence are now perfectly developed in him, though their expression and emphasis may vary according to his ray. He is aware of the fact of the will, or of the first divine aspect, with its 2 qualities, veiling a 3rd of destruction and of purpose. He is becoming active on the 2nd plane of our planetary life, the monadic plane, and that great center of life, Shambhala, is having a definite vibratory effect upon him. Also, and this will be incomprehensible to you, he is becoming sensitive to a range of energies and influences which can now be registered by him owing to his increasing monadic polarization and his contact with Shambhala. The cosmic astral plane becomes, for the master, a definite objective. He is beginning to develop a great sensitivity to that level of awareness, but consciousness of that within the planetary life, as he knows it, prevents him from registering this energy of pure cosmic love as he later will. It is this sense of limitation which is the cause of his recognition of the door on the way of the higher evolution for the fifth and sixth initiations liberate him into the atmic and monadic states of awareness. These initiations are to the initiate at this stage of development what the first and second initiations are to the disciple who is seeking to tread the earlier stages of the path of initiation. They might therefore be regarded as initiations of the threshold, one leading to the awareness of the higher levels of conscious unfoldment, which the third initiation, the first major initiation, inaugurates, and the other to those levels of impression, of contact, and of future ascension, which are the sevenfold goal set before the Master when the sixth initiation, the true ascension, is consummated. It is for this reason that this particular initiation is called the initiation of decision. The Master then chooses which of the 7 ways or paths he will follow, because his aeonial experience has enabled him to choose any of them and know that he has chosen aright. Though these 7 paths, being one of the septenates, are necessarily related to the 7 rays, they are not ray paths, nor are they governed by the 7 rays. Any one of them is open to a master of the wisdom, and his choice will not be dependent upon his ray type, though he will take that factor into consideration. They are more definitely related to the 7 cosmic planes than to the 7 rays. This we will consider in greater detail when dealing with the factor of the 7 ashrams, which are proving grounds for all the masters confronted with the initiation of decision. Disciples are more apt to be interested in the ashram from the angle of their own development. They are not prone to remember that the life progress and purpose of the master not only determines the quality of the ashram, but that his own development and his eventual decisions are closely related to the ashram which he controls. It is not easy for students to shift their attention away from the relation of the ashram to humanity as a whole, or to realize that this relation is secondary to the master whose primary preoccupation is the unfoldment of the purposes of Sanat Kumara and the attainment of that state of being which is significant of Shambhala. Students need to bear in mind that one phase of preparation for future work is that which will succeed the initiation of decision, and that this is dependent upon the type, quality, and service rendered by the master as he conditions and controls his ashram. This I will attempt to enlarge upon under our next heading. It is useful, however, for aspirants to discipleship, and above all for those preparing for initiation, and consequently already working in an ashram, to get this different point of view and begin to unfold within themselves a new sensitivity to impression coming from sources higher than the hierarchy itself. This involves in them a new and higher type of orientation, and though it remains as yet impossible of attainment, there is definite developing value in a grasp of the concept and the effort of the abstract mind and the intuitive perception to seize upon and reflect upon a new and entirely foreign concept. This higher reflective process is to the disciple who is working in an ashram what aspiration is to the student upon the probationary path and the early stages of the path of discipleship. In the latter case, the aspirant's emotional body becomes responsive to the principle of buddhi, reaching him via the love petals of the egoic lotus. In the more exalted situation, the disciple becomes aware, for that is all it is, of the possibility of an impression reaching him from the cosmic astral plane via monadic levels of awareness. Note what I say. Simply the possibility, for there is, at this stage, no assured recognition of this goal. It is an impression which is to the disciple preparing for one of the higher initiations what an occult theory is to an aspirant on very much lower levels. The only way in which I can give any faintest idea of the higher reaches of the initiate consciousness will be through reference to lower grasp capacities and the presentation of indefinable truths in terms of that which has been defined and which, to these higher states of awareness, are in the nature of seed thoughts. Some small grasp of the nature of the consciousness of Shambhala will emerge as we study this section of the treatise, for the higher levels of the cosmic etheric plane are permeated with energies emanating from the cosmic astral plane and the cosmic mental plane. These energies, playing through and directed by the great lives who form a permanent nucleus of the council chamber at Shambhala, do condition and are impelling, motivating, and relating power behind all the evolutionary processes on lower levels. Yet the life and consciousness of the hierarchy are very different to the life and consciousness of those who constitute the great center called Shambhala. The developing sensitivity to increasingly high impression, which is the result of each stage of the final initiatory process, is the only way in which the distinction and the goal become apparent. Just as those who read and study these ideas are occupied with concepts and thoughts totally unrealized and wholly inexplicable and sometimes even senseless to the ordinary and everyday businessman in the street, so there are also ranges of thought and external extraplanetary concepts which are equally unknown and temporarily inexplicable to the initiate working in an ashram under some master. When the student realizes that the great universal oneness which he associates with monadic consciousness is only the registration of impressions localized and therefore limited and defined within the etheric levels of the cosmic physical plane, he can perhaps grasp the implications of the wonder which will be revealed to the initiate who can transcend the entire cosmic physical plane, our 7 planes of the human, superhuman, and the divine worlds, and function upon another cosmic level. This is what the treading of the way of the higher evolution enables a master eventually to do. One interesting fact emerges out of all this comparative work and this mode of analogical teaching, and that is that the word spiritual refers neither to religious matters, so-called, nor to the path of discipleship or the path of the major or higher initiations, but to the relationships on every level of the cosmic physical plane, to every level from the lowest to the highest. The word spiritual relates to attitudes, to relationships, to the moving forward from one level of consciousness, no matter how low or gross, from the point of view of the higher level of contact to the next. It is related to the power to see the vision, even if that vision is materialistic, as seen from the angle of the higher registration of possibility. The word spiritual refers to every effect of the evolutionary process as it drives man forward from one range of sensitivity and of responsiveness to impression to another. It relates to the expansion of consciousness so that the unfoldment of the organs of sensory perception in primitive man or in the awakening infant are just as surely spiritual events as participation in an initiatory process. The development of the so-called irreligious man into a sound and effective businessman with all the necessary perception and equipment for success is as much a spiritual unfoldment in that individual's experience as the taking of an initiation by a disciple in an ashram. The assumption by Orthodox Church people that the word spiritual connotes profound and effective interest in Orthodox religion is not borne out by the facts of the spiritual life. Someday, when the world is increasingly led by its initiates, this erroneous assumption will be discarded, and it will be realized that all activity which drives the human being forward towards some form of development, physical, emotional, intuitional, and so forth, is essentially spiritual in nature and is indicative of the livingness of the inner divine entity. I have felt it necessary to point this out because it will become apparent as we read and study this section of the treatise that the master, moving forward into higher areas of impressionability, may not and frequently will not express this development in terms of what is now regarded as spiritual by the religious devotee and by the man used to the wording and the terminology of the churchmen of all faiths. The discoveries of science, my brother, or the production of some great work in literature and the field of art are just as much an evidence of spiritual unfoldment as the rhapsodies of the mystic or the registration by the so-called occultist of a contact with the hierarchy. There will, however, come a point in the experience of all those thus making a spiritual approach along some specialized line where a meeting place will become apparent, where a joint goal will be unitedly recognized, where essential unity under diversity of forms, of methods, and of techniques will be acknowledged, and where pilgrims on all ways of approach will know themselves to be one band of demonstrators of the divine. One such meeting place is upon the periphery of the hierarchy during the stage immediately prior to the acceptance into an ashram. It is interesting to note that, on a worldwide scale, the world disciple humanity is today on the verge of this major awakening and joint registration of a unity not hitherto reached. The growth of the spirit of internationalism, the inclusiveness of the scientific attitude, and the spread of a universal humanitarian welfare movement are all indicative of this meeting place. Another such meeting place is recorded and entered, symbolically speaking, when the third initiation is taken, and still another is realized at the time of the seventh initiation. These all register development in group awareness, as well as in the recognition of the individual initiate as to what is happening within the consciousness aspect of humanity. The door into the way of the higher evolution simply permits the entrance of the sensitive initiate into spheres of intimacy, as they are sometimes called, which are this time cosmic in their implications, planetary in their effects, and which give to the initiate what has been called the key to the sun, as it conditions the solar system, just as the door of initiation gives to the aspirant the key to the kingdom of God. We have dealt in the foregoing pages with deep matters and have touched upon topics too high for the understanding of the average student or probationary disciple. Dim recognitions based on past acceptances are, however, possible to some of you. We have seen, among other things, that the so-called door of initiation presents obstacles whose purpose is to block entrance and to draw out the latent will of the applicant. An initiate is one who succeeds in penetrating to the further side of the door where recognition awaits him. We will now concern ourselves with the basic theme of the ashram itself. And we're going to call it there for today and pick back up here either tomorrow or the next day. So this will be out soon. But okay. Very good. Have a good one.